Good morning, afternoon, evening, everyone. Rhypi here. Welcome to Rhypi Talks. In this episode, we're going to be ranking some water type Pokemons that when I was doing some research, that this is the one that I saw the most in there of all the water type Pokemons. So we're going to use this one. As before, if you guys want to comment below what you would have put in the tier list in a different order, feel free to let me know in the comments below. But let's go ahead and get started. And I'm also going to have music playing in the background for you guys, so when I'm thinking, you guys hear something still. So with this in mind that we're going to be starting off like we did last time with the starters. So with this in mind, Squirtle, or Squirty as I know him more, I'm gonna put him as a C, and we're gonna be putting all of the starters that way. Blastoise I'm gonna put as an A because I really enjoy using him. Remember, these are just my initial impulse. It's not based on stats. It's not based on anything else. Just my initial impulse and what I know about the Pokemon already. Maybe in the future I'll redo this once I do some research and seeing if the stats change. And then Wartortle, I'm gonna put it as a B. And for Totodile, Crocodile, and Rallier pretty much follows the same for me. Even though Rallier can get strong jaw and stuff like that, it's not always guaranteed you can get that. So just things to keep in mind. Alright, so we're gonna do Mudkip, Mashita, the same, and Swampert. Even though it's water ground, it loses some of the things that some people enjoy, but it also has thunder immunity. So with that in mind, why I'm still gonna be doing A. Next up, Piplup, being we got Piplup. Alright, where Piplup? Where's Piplup? Where's Piplup? There it is. And Empoleon being our first official water steel, if I recall. It was cool to see, even though I didn't use it first. I used Turtwig first, but it was still cool to see a water steel type. It's not often that type combination was a thing. And one of my best friends had a favorite animal of a penguin, so I always am reminded of that when I see them. Next up, we have Oshawott. Gonna put Oshawott as a C, Duat as a B, and Samurott also an A, even though it is the case that it feels like it's a slight repeat of as far as it being water only, but at the same time it has its own unique moveset that sets it apart as well. So, and that's why a lot of the water starters I typically use, but in this generation I use Snivy. So first, righty. Okay, next one is gonna be our 6th generation Froakie, which I used, and we will put Froakie and Frogadier in the usual spots. Once I find it, there you go. And Greninja, I know that some people will put him in S because of Protean, but when you're first starting out, you don't always get Protean or Battle Bond and stuff like that. So for me, I'm gonna still put it in A because it is a solid water type, even if it can change typings. That's a similar reason why I put Skeleturge in A as well. I mean, not Skeleturge, Cinderace in A for that same reason, because it's not guaranteed that you'll get that. And next up, we have Loa, also a water type that I used on when I was going through being Popplio with Brion and Primarina. Why do I not see you? Why is Clonster right here? There's Primarina. We'll go ahead and make that first, since that's who I see first. It's a good water fairy type, and even though there is Azumarill as well, that's water fairy. I enjoyed using it as a starter when I was in the Alolan region. Why do I not see you? Oh, there you are. Alrighty. Next up, we have Generation 8. This was Swabble. And Talion as the final evolution. And why am I spacing? Oh yeah, Drizzle. Forgot the middle evolution because I didn't. For me, I used this guy, but Sword and Shield is the one I had the least experience when it comes to the gameplay, just because it was around the time when I was starting to have a full-time job again. But I finished it in one day because I knew that I wanted to finish it, just in case my students was trying to spoil this story for me, because this was the first year of me teaching a full-time job. And then next but not least, we have our Generation 9, which is the combination of Quaxly, Quaxel, and Quaquaval. And I can't tell you if I'm saying it correctly. And this one, unfortunately, I can't say too much about, just because I didn't use it, because I was one of the ones that used Hemiscarada and Sprigata, because I at the time preferred the grass types that looked better to me when I first saw the three. You know, I didn't know how big of a fan there was going to be for the other two starters, but that was just me. So now we have interesting choices of what we can do next of water types. So with this in mind, before we do any of the Gmax Megas and stuff like that, like we did before, I'm going to try to do it in terms of when we see them in this respective game. So I'm going to try to do all the Gen 1 Pokemons I see that's not Mega or Gmax forms, just to showcase them. So first, even though the Shelter is shiny and it's not the first water type in the game, I'm gonna put Shelter in C, and Cloyster I'm gonna put as an A, even though Skill Link is not always what you get, but it's still a very defensive mon if it doesn't get hit by electric type moves, is even grass types, the other kind of weakness it has gets neutralized by the ice. So with that in mind, we will have Horsey and Seadra. And similar to how we've been doing the other ones, eventually, and we'll go ahead and do King Dragon Ocean too. Being Water Dragon. That this also is a really good line, and why I enjoyed it being in Pokemon Unbound. I'm not Unbound. Pokemon Omicron, that was a potential starter, and we somehow through talking to the scientists got it as well. That was a good pickup. That as a good choice to me, at least. Alright. Next, we have Magikarp and Gyarados. If it was just Magikarp, definitely a D, because it only knows Splash, Tackle, and I think one other move, Flail now. But at one point, it just knew Splash, and you had to switch train it when you first got it. But Gyarados was a solid Pokemon. The water flying hinders it a little bit, so that's why I've been like, I'm not sure if I'm gonna put it as an A. And I know a lot of people are gonna get upset at me putting it in a B, but there's a lot of things that I could have done better, and some people will put this as a C because it wasn't a dragon type. But similar to Charizard, people always try to make things dragon type that because they wanted to see a dragon type Pokemon besides just Dragonite at the beginning. Alright, so we'll have Lapras, and I didn't always use this on the team when I was playing through the games, but when I've been doing different runs for myself, when I've been trying to decide what kind of runs I want to do, it's a solid Pokemon, and Pokérug is a good one and stuff, so I'm gonna put it as a B because it does have shell armor, so it blocks critical hits and stuff like that, if I recall correctly. And hopefully I'm not thinking of a different Pokemon, but yeah, that's why I choose that. Then we have the Poliwhirl line, and like with the Horsey, we're gonna go ahead and just talk about all of them at once. Poliwag and Poliwhirl, I'm actually gonna put C because Poliwhirl, even though it did a little bit more damage, I always felt like it didn't do enough. And then Poliwrath, originally I would say it's D because I never really evolved it, but when I had a chance of having one before in a Nuzlocke that you guys haven't seen before because it was before I started YouTube, I really enjoyed it, having that fighting type coverage, so I'm putting it in A. And then Politoed can be really good with Drizzle, and has Psychic type moves, but it never was Water Psychic, and then I did understood that. So because its typing is just water, I'm putting it as a B. But if it was Water Psychic, I would consider it an A too, because of its unique charm to it. Then we have Seal Dewdong, our other water and then water ice like Cloyster. We'll put Seal here. And Dewdong, my sis really enjoyed playing when she had it. That I helped her get her Dewdong and Gyarados, and she used those throughout her journey. And when she was playing the game, when she helped me get a Growlithe when I wanted it, and when we was playing Fire Red and Leaf Green together. So that's why Dewdong has a little special spot, even though I know a lot of people will put it in the C rank because it doesn't really do much and it's not as bulky as Cloyster, but I beg a differ that it is bulky at the same time. And then we'll do our fossils. They was both rock water or water rock, but still I thought that was interesting for generation 1. I'm gonna put both Omnia and Kabuto as C's, and their evolutions they was both really good, but over time there's been a lot of grass types, a lot of ground types, and electric types that can overwhelm both of these guys. Even though Army Star can learn Shell Armor, not Shell Armor, Shell Smash, but it just, for me nowadays, it feels like it's outclassed a lot. So I can only say there B right now. And then Goldeen and Seeking was a really good Pokemon as well. That we'll put Goldeen as C. Seadra, with it being Lightning Rod is an A, but regular Seeking is just a B here to me. It does good enough damage, but it feels like with all the other Gen 1 waters that kind of gets lost. And last but not least, we have Psyduck and Golduck. Psyduck, I'm gonna put it as a C. And Golduck, similar to Politoed, if it was actually Water Psychic, I would put it as an A. That has good coverage with that. But it feels in the same way that Politoed does, that it doesn't have that Psychic stab, so it doesn't boost it as much. In some fan games they change it to be Water Psychic, but I don't usually see Politoed being changed to Water Psychic in those games. So just something interesting to point out. And then I believe the last Gen 1, oh no, 2 more. I'm seeing the other one right now. We have Kingler and Krabby. Once again, I'm gonna put Krabby on B because it can be strong, but compared to another crab Pokemon that we'll talk about in a little while, that it feels like it gets lost sometimes, at least from my initial opinions. And then last but not least, we have Starry and Starmie, Misty's Pokemons. And Starry is a C, and Starmie, I believe, was a Water Psychic. Don't quote me, just because it's not something I have looked up yet, because I don't always use it. But when I did use it, it was a solid Pokemon, but not as good as the starters. I'll say that. Alrighty. And I believe that's all. No, there was one more. Or 2 more. Man, we have a lot of Gen 1s. We have Tentacle and Tentacruel. It's the water poison typing, and it was the first one of its kind. I'm putting it in A because it was a really good wall that you didn't expect to have to worry about if you was using grass types in Generation 1. And for me, it was the case of I didn't really use electric type Pokemons back then, so Tentacruel was always an issue when I was going through to get to Cinnabar Island, until I remembered that I could go from Pallet Town to Cinnabar Island, and made things a lot easier for me. It wasn't until Generation 3 that I started using Jolteon, as a EV evolution. But no, at the time there was only Magneton, Voltorb, and a couple others, but we'll save that for electric type. And then the last one I forgot about, Vaporeon. This one, compared to Flareon, had its good days in Generation 1, had good days in Gen 2 and other generation. It's always been a solid Pokemon that I know some people will put it as a B because it doesn't always get enough coverage, but I'm going to put it in A because it can handle itself on dragon types, it can handle itself in flying types and stuff like that. Where in some water Pokemon, they get very destroyed because it doesn't have enough defenses to help it out. And now that's all the Gen 1 and starters so far. Wowza. That's a lot of video. we're just getting to 20 minutes and we saw a lot more water types. This is the most that we have in front of us. And I forgot to count how many there was at the beginning. Whoops. It happens. Alrighty, next up we're gonna do Gen 2. It's our Neons. So, besides Kingdra, because we already talked about Kingdra, we have Marrow and Azumarill. And fun fact, Azurill is water. Is not water, it's normal or normal fairy, depending on the generation. Marrow and Azumarill has the capability of having huge power, so sometimes I might put it as B and A respectively. But for Marrow wise, I'm gonna put it as a C. But because of the tight coverage that eventually gets, Azumarill is an A. But if we're just talking about Gen 3, I would put it in a B, even though it was a good Pokemon, to say the least. And at one point, I had on my team both Azumarill and Swampert to cover each other's weaknesses. So, yeah, to say the least, that was fun. Fun to say. So, with that in mind, our next Generation 2, Corsola. Unfortunately, this little guy didn't do much, and people didn't really use him, even when it was announced that he had a new form in a lone region. That some people used him, but some people didn't. But for me, I'm gonna put it as a C because it is a water rock type that wasn't a fossil, but it didn't feel like it did anything besides that. And I just realized I skipped Slowpoke and Slowbro as another Gen 1. Let's fix that real quick. Slowpoke, see? The first true water psychics. Slowbro was really tanky, and I remember enjoying using him. That's why it's gonna be an A. And Slowking, that I didn't initially use because it was requiring a trade, and Generation 2 I didn't know that it was a trade evolution, but when I used it on different randomizers, it was a solid Pokemon. But I couldn't say that I like Slowbro less than Slowking. I can't believe I skipped them. I'm sorry, guys. And then we have Wooper. Water that turns into Quagsire, our first true water ground. That I'm gonna put it in A because when it was introduced, it was the first one that we didn't have to worry about water immunity, and at this time I was using a Chikorita, so I had Quagsire to kind of counteract some of the things that needed for my Chikorita not have to worry about with fire types in both fronts of water and ground. So it always has a good spot for my eyes. Right. Then we have Lantern and Chinchou, and I remember using both of these guys on my team at one point once I realized their typings, because I realized I can switch them out to when the other team was trying to use something that was negative against it. Where are you, Chinchou? I know you're here. There you are. So I'm gonna put Chinchou as a C and Lantern as an A, because regardless if it's Water Absorb or Water Absorb, it's really good. Illuminate, I know it can bring it down a little bit, but like I said, I used both of these interchangeably on my teams in Gold and Silver when I was young, so I have a lot of experience with them. We have Quillfish. If it wasn't for its Hisuian form, I would say that he wasn't the best, but when I was in Legend of Arceus, he was a solid Pokemon to use when when push came to shove. So, keeping him at a C rank because he did decently in that game, even if I wouldn't say that I normally would use him, to be honest. I do not want my ending song to be there right now. Can I skip it? Thank you. Not my ending song, please. Alright, then we have Murmurade and Octai. And even though it can have Bullet Seed and stuff like that, I feel like it gets kind of lost sometimes with everything else that we have already seen so far. Similar to Manti, if I would, before we realized it became an evolution, it kind of got a little lost, but it was a decent water flying type that I'm putting it there. And its baby evolution, even though it's Generation 4, we'll put it already for C. Double checking that I didn't miss anyone for Generation 2. I'm gonna be upset if I miss something again. I think I'm in the clear with not missing something, because in Generation 2, if I remember, I didn't really have a new fossil, if I remember right. I know some of you guys might point it out in the comments that I was wrong, but right now it's just not coming to me. But Generation 3 was an interesting time when they experimented on different water types again. Parboach being a water ground in his evolution Wish Cache. In Mystery Dungeon games, it's kind of cool seeing that he was a caretaker of sorts, but in competitiveness, because Swampert, it kind of feels like it got overshadowed, so that's why I'm putting it in a B rank, but it is a solid Pokemon if you don't think about that. Next up, we have Clamperl, Huntel, and Gorbis. These guys are solid Pokemons. If some fan games make it where Gorbis is Water Psychic, Huntel's Water Dark, and that was really cool to see in some of those fan games, but as themselves, they don't really feel like they have anything that I almost want have tempted to put them here, just because it doesn't feel like they've done much, unfortunately. So, but I can see them being kind of more useful than Clamperl. So, and Shell Smash kind of helped them a little bit too, because it is a Ignite, but if you don't train it, you don't see it. And then Cast Form Water, Rainy Form, I don't really use him that much, but it was decent. But like with Magikarp, it just doesn't seem like it holds its own. But even if it has better moves, but similar to that, Feebas we'll put as a D. But my Melodic, that Pokemon right there is very interesting. And originally, I would say I never used, because even Feebas I never used when I was first growing up. That I never got to catch it, because it was a rare spawn, whether you're talking about Generation 3 or Generation 4. Later games, they made it more accessible to find, and when I used it, it was decent. And I know a lot of people rave this Pokemon, because it's very tanky, similar to how Dragonite is with more scale. But I don't remember if it's 100% that you get that ability. I know a lot of people put in even S tier, but I'm gonna put Melodic in B tier. Yeah, I know that's gonna upset some. Wingull and Pelipper are first evolutions of water flying. Wingull C and Pelipper, if it has drizzle, it's an A. But otherwise, it was a good solid Pokemon for water flying, and depending on which team I'm running in home region, that I used him as my team member, but I had sometimes used a different flying type Pokemon instead. And then we have Lotad, Ludicolo, and Lumbre. I've always enjoyed using these guys. And I remember young me, before I realized it could be used as Water Stone, because I was just testing out stones. I actually used just a Lumbre in my Elite Four when I was younger, because I didn't realize it had a third evolution, because it didn't click to me Ludicolo was Lumbre's evolution. So like for me, I would put Lumbre there. But Ludicolo, if you don't raise a Lumbre as much as I did, you lose some of the moves that it can learn. So I'm putting it as a B, just because if you catch it just as a Ludicolo, it doesn't do much. But that's just me. And then one more way I learned, even though it is a puzzle to get to it, that you had to use Weller and Relicanth, but for me, it does a solid job, but not much to say that it's memorable, similar to Relicanth that I'm putting in C, even though it's a water rock that's not fossil. That doesn't feel like it did much. Next up, we have Steelio, and Warlane. These guys, I would also say that I didn't use much in my initial playthrough, because how late in the game, but because of different runs I've done across different Nuzlocke and roguelike games, I appreciated this evolution line because of its sturdiness of defenses, similar to how some people feel about Cloyster, but does it a little bit better, but not quite to me say that's the S rank. Surskit, it's a solid Pokemon to me, even though Masquerain sometimes was a letdown when it became a bug flying, but Surskit was a decent Pokemon to say the least. And then we have Corphish and Cardot, like we talked about before. That these, I kind of felt like, but once they was introduced, that people forgot which was which of these guys. Even though Cardot was Water Dark and was on Sydney's team, but some people always confuse these two because of that. But besides that, they had very similar movesets. Besides that, Cardot can use Dark type moves, so I had to put them about the same, in my opinion. And then Lovedis is one that I can say that I never really used. And a few times I tried to use it, it's just not been the best. So I guess I could put it as a D rank, but because I at least used it once that I can remember, but it wasn't memorable. Alright, scanning through, and then our first official water legendary, Kyogre, was a really good mon. I almost want to put it as a S tier by itself, but I'm gonna put it as an A because of what we'll talk about in a little bit. Why I'm putting it as an A, but it's a solid Pokemon that when I did catch it, I eventually sometimes had all three water types still on my team. being Azumarill, Kyogre, and Swampert, but sometimes I drop Azumarill after I caught Kyogre. So, just things to think about. Alright. So next up, we have Generation 4, where they introduced Shellos and Gastrodon, which a lot of people really enjoyed because how tanky it was, and I think it's interesting how they separated the two, being West Sea and East Sea. But I know some people only used one of these guys, but to me they felt the same. That they was really good. I used Turtwig, like you guys know, and I used them for a little bit, but because eventually I found out that was water ground, I accidentally got it spoiled to me. That I enjoyed Weasel a lot more because of that, and Floatzel because it had a much more coverage and stuff like that. So for me, I would put Floatzel in A, even though I know usually people will put it as the opposite, but that's just from my experience. Ready? Lumineon and Finneon. I feel like because how late you get these guys, they kind of got lost in time, and that's a little sad to say. But when I used them in roguelike challenges, I enjoy using them. That's why I'm gonna put Lumineon up here, even though I know a lot of people will put it straight to C or D for both of these, but that's just me. Alrighty. And then we have Fion and Manaphy. Manaphy is a solid Pokemon with Tail Glow and a couple other things. I'm putting it as an A. And Fion is a solid Pokemon, even though it can't get to Manaphy, but you can breed a Manaphy to get a Fion. I'm gonna put it as a C rank. And I might put it in front of Squirtle for this, because it is considered a sub-legendary. And then the other Generation 4 water type is Pokemon Water Dragon, which is the first time a lot of people used a Water Dragon, because not many people used Kingdra at that point because it was a trade evolution. I just got lucky to be able to use it back then, because my dad knew about it being a trade evolution once we tried trading different things. But we never thought about using Slowpoke with a Kingstrike back then. And then Bidoof and Barrel, even though Bidoof is just normal, Barrel adds its normal type of Gen 4. The first time that they deviated from it being just a normal type, it was a decent Pokemon, but I can't justify it. I know it gets simple and stuff like that, but and I just realized it's Generation 3 that we forgot, because they can be forgettable. Carvana and Sharpedo. I'm sorry, guys, but Sharpedo can be an A, can be a B, depending on the day. But because I've just realized I forgot about them, that's why I'm putting them as B and C. But I know sometimes I'll put them as B and A if I didn't forget about them. Dang it. I did get it coming through. Alrighty. Generation 4. Just looking through to make sure I'm not missing anyone. Hopefully not missing anyone this time. remember, I'm not doing any forms yet, so that's why. And last but not least, we did have a water legendary before Kyogre. Sweet. I'm so sorry. It was a solid Pokemon. Can be tanky, but if it wasn't for later games, I would say it's never used. But I've used it since then. I just forgot it was a legendary for a second. So I think I was thinking it was a mythical. Man, I'm failing all over the place right now. And then Monomosh, solid Pokemon. We'll put it as a bead ring too. Even though I know a lot of people would put it as S tier because of it being electric water. But that's just me. Alright, Generation 5. If I remember right, it doesn't introduce a lot of water types in this generation, which is interesting to say at least. We had the Basculin lines, and we'll talk about the Hisui one later. But the original ones, I'm going to put as a C because they didn't really do much for me. We have Ducklet and Swanna. Where's Ducklet, I'm putting C, Swanna, because it does have good coverage and stuff like that. I'm going to put it as a B, but I can't give it a A rank. And then the water type I mainly used on my team is Typal, Poplitoad, and Seismic Toad. And I'm gonna put these guys in CBA respectively, because it was a really good Pokemon and I enjoyed using it. And I remember so many people thought it was a water poison type because of the moves it learned, but it is a water ground. I remember being shocked about that, and I'm hoping I remembered that correctly. And then we have the fossils that I'm gonna say right now, I'm biased when it comes to turtles. Turtles, like with Squirtle and Twig. So when I found out that this was a turtle, I immediately loved it, even though I know that it should be a B rank because it is another water rock fossil that didn't really do much, but I enjoy turtles. I'm sorry. And then we have Panpour and Simipour that I used a little bit because it was given to me for the first gym, but after that I didn't really use it as much. I got it to Simipour, but by the time I was going against Eliza, I didn't want too many water types once I found out she was an electric type, so I put Simipour in the bench. But it was a solid Pokemon, so I'm putting it as a B. And even in runs, I've used it from time to time, and it's helped. Then we have Relish and Jellicent. That it's one of those that I can say that I didn't really use that much on my team because of how late you get it. But with all the challenge runs and stuff, it is a solid Pokemon, being a water ghost. So I had to put it as an, and I'm gonna put it as an A actually instead of B, because it is a solid Pokemon. It can be very tanky, and Ghostly is that unique typing that not many water types have at this point. And then this Arceus water, I skipped it because I wasn't sure what to do with him, because I'll be honest, I never used Arceus, even because in the United States at one point you had to hack the game to get the Pokemon, and for me, I never was interested in hacking to get a Pokemon, so that's just me. Alrighty. And Alomomolas and Liliptis, people thought this was going to be evolution of Loftus, but feels like it gets lost. Even though it has good abilities, so sometimes I can say it's a C, but other times I can say it's a D because it gets very lost, to say the least. And then Keldeo as a decent legendary as a B, but I didn't really use it as much besides when I'm doing Nuzlocke and other things. And I would say that this guy I didn't really use because I didn't have access to it, because I didn't have the events as often that I had it on my team. I will say that for a brief moment, but because it was water fighting, I already had two or three water types on my Generation 5 team, so I didn't really use it, but it was a solid Pokemon. Making sure I'm not forgetting anyone. And then from here, they kind of slowed down a lot of the water types. As you can see, that we have a lot that we talked about, and we only have this much left. Even though, yes, it is still a lot to look at. That we have 58 Pokemon still down here, but it's more than what's up. It's less than what's up there already, and at least half of this, if not a little bit lower, is Megas or G-Max and stuff like that. So in Generation 6, they introduced Megas, so we'll talk about Megas at the same time as Legendaries and stuff like that. And Volcanion is also one I'm going to talk about in Generation 6, because even though we can argue that it was a Generation 7 Pokemon because it was introduced very late, and because people kept on trying to hack at this point to find out what Pokemon wasn't there yet. But it was a solid Pokemon, and shout out to Moolah, our Volcanion Abound. That when we was doing the randomizer Nuzlocke, that is a solid Pokemon and solid legendary, even though a lot of people call it mythical because of the trading card game now, but I still put it as a solid Pokemon. That I even would put it as a S if it wasn't for that sometimes fire can be a hindrance in certain battles, so that's why I can't outright say it's an S. And I know we talked about the legendary first this time, which is unlike me, but let's start talking about some of the Generation 5. So Launcher, when I first looked at it, before I realized the back was supposed to be like a shroom, I remember a lot of people thought this was going to be some kind of crab Pokemon. And Clarissa, I was surprised that it was the first time I saw Mega Launcher, and it was a solid Pokemon. Well, Pokemon, and made me appreciate Water Pulse and Dark Pulse a little bit more, because it boosted those moves. That was Pulse. And then we have Binnacle and Barbarical. I'm actually going to put Barbarical in A, even though some people put it in B, because it was a really good coverage Pokemon for the time. Even though I didn't use it because I had Froakie, but I know some people that really enjoyed using it on the team. Alrighty. I feel like I'm missing a water. Yep, Strope. Because the other one is Poison Dragon when it's evolved, but as a Strope, it is a solid Pokemon. That I remember using him, and when I found out he changed typings, I was like, oh, cool, and kept him on my team. Alrighty. And I think that's all the waters before we start talking about all the megas. Looks like the case. So let's start talking about some of the megas, shall we? So Squirtle, going Mega Blastoise, is the first real mega I had besides Lucario that they give to everyone. That this one, because it had what I enjoyed about Cloudix or being a good water type user for Mega Launcher, and I used it mainly during my second team when I was using Finnegan. But this is my first true C. Not C. So it was really good. Good to say the least. Slowbro, it was a good ball, but I didn't really use it as much because I always forgot it was a mega, to be honest. It was only in Oris that you got it at first. Alrighty. Gyarados being water dark fixed some of the problems that I had with Gyarados. And I didn't fix a lot of people because I was disappointed that was a water dragon. But in water dark, it kind of helped itself, and it felt like it had better coverage and stuff like that to me when it was introduced. Yes, Sharpedo's also water dark, but there was something interesting about that typing that sold it for me. And is that really? Oh, there's 3 more megas I can think of. But besides those 3, no other megas. Wow. Sharpedo, it was really interesting that some people put in A, S, and stuff like that. I'm gonna put it as B because I didn't use it as much like with Slowbro, but it was a solid Pokemon. Primacar, however, I'm gonna put as an S because of its ability mainly of drowning out all fire type moves and even some ground type moves from ground on and stuff like that. It was really a good mon. And Swampert, when I first used it, I was a little disappointed that it felt like it was just was a puncher of some sorts. I thought it was water fighting at first when I first saw it, but then I saw that it stayed water ground, and there's part of me that wants to put it up here, but part of me just remember my initial impulse of being like, not sure. Remember that when I first saw that guy being his mega, because on my team I had both Torchic and Mudkip because of the events Torchic that you got if you pre-ordered it. I had that and Beldum on my team. Is the shiny Beldum. Also, if you pre-order it through a different way, I had it. Both of those guys. Or excuse me, Torchic was X and Y. Never mind. But that's why when it was Oris, I knew that it was gonna have the other 2 megas at that point. And I already saw Torchic, so it was a good mon, like we talked about before. And then Generation 6, we have Marini and Toxapex. With the sheer wallness that's similar to Tentacle, it was a really solid Pokemon. A lot of people got upset with Baneful Bunker and stuff like that. And then Wishy Washy, I feel like it's lost, but not as lost as the other ones. So I'm gonna put it as a C rank. And then Dupitter and Araquanid, I really enjoyed the typing of Bug Water, like we talked about with Surskit, and that it was actually an evolution of Bug Water. I was really excited for that, even if I didn't use it because I had Primarina. It was still cool to see a Bug Water type. I remember being very excited for that. And then Bruxish being Water Psychic, it was decent. I always forget if this is Generation 6 or 7 Mon, to be honest. And Pukimiku with Thinners Out was a really solid Pokemon. That's why I can almost say that's B. I know some people would argue with me about that. And Tapafini was a solid legendary guardian. Solid water fairy. But because of other water fairies, I didn't find it. I didn't really use it as much, especially Primarina. But that's why I'm going to put it there. And then we have one Pod and Glistopod. Because of Emergency Exit, this guy kind of goes down for me. Because it didn't really feel like it did much. That's why I always enjoyed Araquanid a little bit more. And then this was also when they introduced Battle Bond a little bit more, because you got it as in RS, but people found out more about Battle Bond then. But for me, just because I didn't really use it that much, to be honest, I had kept it in my PC because I wanted to use other Pokemon. I'm gonna say that it's actually a B, to be honest with you guys. No, that's gonna upset some people. Alrighty. And I think that's all the water types in Generation 6. I think so. I'm not missing anyone. Alrighty. And then Generation 7, they brought a lot more water types again. And then also the G-Max form, so we'll talk about those too. So, with that in mind, Cramorant, I'll be honest, I was never a huge fan of it, and I didn't really see the purpose of them. But I can say that I somewhat used them, but I didn't really try to understand why the other Pokemon that was stuck in them. So I just only used the regular one. And I think there's a third one, but I don't remember what it is because how often I didn't use it. We have Turtle and Dreadnought, which, like I said before, I kind of favor Turtles a little bit more. Even though I didn't use it on my team, I just had it on me and the PC. And then Dracovish and Octovish, I didn't use as much because at that point I didn't even realize they had fossils. But when I've used it in roguelike games, I enjoyed them. So that's why I'm gonna put them as a C. But it's because they was kind of forgettable for me, and there was not an evolution for them that I feel like they kind of get lost. Alrighty. And then for the G-Maxes, Dreadnought, I really enjoyed using when I do use it, but I'm gonna put it as an A because I didn't always use it, and because it changed types, I had to remind myself that. And then I don't remember why I didn't use Lapras and Kingler offhand, but Blastoise was part of the DLC, and I didn't really play the DLC, so that's why for these guys, all the G-Maxes, I can't say I've used. Similar to Urshifu, because it was that, even though I used it a little bit in one of my runs of Rogue, Pokerogue, or not Pokerogue, Emerald, but it wasn't like, it was like something I can say that I recall or remembered. And then Teleon, I remember using it, enjoyed using, I remember being like, whoa, that changed interesting, but I'm gonna put it as an S because it did a lot of damage. I remember that. And then when it was to Sumian, Samurott was my starter, so I'm always gonna enjoy this guy a little bit more than some people. With Ceaseless Edge and a couple other moves, it was a really good coverage compared to Samurott. That I would argue that it's better than regular Samurott in some cases. I understand the difference between the two. And in origin form, I liked, but I'm gonna put it as a B just because I didn't really use it as much as I did with regular Pokia. Because I didn't really use the legendaries when I was on Legend of Arceus, surprisingly. Because of how late you get them. And by that point, I was just like, it's decent. And in the Basculation, I'll be honest, I didn't know Basculation was a form of Basculin when I first saw it. But when I've been doing different runs and stuff, it's grown on me a little bit, but not enough to say that's an A rank. And then we have left is all the new water types besides the water type starter. So first things first, Tatsugiri is a decent mon. So it's Dondozo, but I don't use it that much, and I've only really used the orange one, so I can't say that I use the other forms as much. Supposedly these all do slightly different things. If you guys know, let me know in the comments below, but I haven't really done my research on them. Sorry. Then Palafin is something I really enjoyed, and hero mode is really good, but you have to switch it out for it to really be good, and it's a slight downfall for that. And Venison, so that's why I'm putting both Palafin forms in B, but in C for Venison. Aracuda and Barracuda, I feel like I never really used that. Got lost with me, that because there was a lot of other water Pokemon that was available at that point, so I didn't really use it. Luza, similar, that I didn't really use. Wiggly and Wugtrio, I enjoyed seeing that Diglett had gotten in a different form, even though I know some people didn't. But it was a solid Pokemon. And then Iron Bundle, it was a solid Pokemon again, but I didn't use it as much besides roguelike games, so that's why that's there. Teal Mass, DLC, never really used. Then Tauros in the roguelike games is a B, but in the regular game, it just didn't seem like it was necessary to me. I'm sorry. After having other water fighting types already. And then Walking Rake, it's trading card is really good, but I haven't yet used it yet. So this is my ranking. You guys let me know if you guys liked it or not. We talked about a lot of different Pokemons, to say the least. And I'll nickname it later. And if you guys want me to make my own tier list so you guys can try them out too, let me know in the comments below. But this has been all the water type Pokemon. And thank you once again. This time to the creator of this one, being Momo still. But if you guys enjoy this and want to see more, feel free to let me know in the comments below. That this has been Rhypi Talks with ranking water type Pokemon. I hope you guys have a good morning, afternoon, or evening, depending on when you're watching this video. See you guys next time. Peace.